Alright class, in this video we're going to look at the parts of a cell, why cells are important, difference between pro and eukaryotic cells, plant and animal cells. Here's a test question from a previous person. It says draw a plant cell and label the important parts. No windows and iron bars. Different type of cell. Alright, first we're going to look at where does a cell actually go in our levels of organization. So if we're starting at the atomic level, those are individual atoms in a periodic table. Many atoms together will make a molecule. If you put many molecules together, you actually get an organelle. Organelle means little cell. Nucleus in this case is a small part of a cell. Today we're going to be focusing on the cellular level. And that's Milo. He's an animal cell. He's trying to help out here. Many cells together will make a tissue. After tissue, you get an organ. Many organs is an organ system. After organ system, you get an organism. And then you can even look at ecology. Many different organisms will make a population. Many different populations make a community. And then you get ecosystems, which is the living and non-living parts of the location. Cells were actually discovered by a scientist named Robert Hooke. Robert Hooke in 1665 observed a thin slice of cork. If you look in the picture over here, these are actual cork cells in a small layer. You see how they're box-like structures? That's because that they have cell walls. He described these sort of little boxes or like cells in a monastery. He was actually working with monasteries and they have little box-like cells in a church. Robert Hooke helped develop the cell theory. Basic facets of the cell theory are all living things have to be composed of one or more cells. Some cells like bacteria are one cell, unicellular, while animals are multicellular. Cells are organisms' basic units of structure and function. Structure means the parts of the cell that make it work. The function are what it actually does. And number 3, cells can only come from existing cells. There's another video I did on mitosis that describes that. Alright, the organization of cells. Nucleus is the main organelle that determines what type of kingdom or domain actually it's in. It contains DNA, which directs the activity of the cell. You have the difference between eukaryote and prokaryote. The eukaryotes have a nucleus. Think plant cells, animal cells, fungus, and protists. Your prokaryote, pro means before, karyote means nucleus, so they lack a nucleus. These are our archaea and eubacterias. They're much more simpler organisms because they don't have internal membranes. These show some diagrams of pro versus eukaryotes. As you can see, the prokaryote right here, they're much more simpler organisms. They don't have detailed internal membranes. This picture right here shows a diagram of the eukaryotes. Here I have those circular structures that determine having nucleus and other nuclear membranes that keep them more advanced in terms of energy and reproduction. The term organelle actually means a little organ. So we're looking at smaller parts of a cell. They're only found in eukaryotic cells again. All the stuff between it is the cytosol. That's that blue little liquid that's surrounding the organelles. Everything else except the nucleus is called cytoplasm. Okay? Next we're going to go over some of the main cell organelles. These are not all of them, but these are the ones that are usually tested on. First one is your cell membrane. That is your boundary or outside part of the cell. And it makes a phospholipid, remember lipids mean fats, bilayer. Bilayer means that you have 2 different layers. You have one that's hydrophobic and then one that's hydrophilic. You also have these little integral proteins that use active or passive transport in order to bring molecules in or out of the cell that normally don't want to be there. I made another video on cell transport that you should watch on my biology playlist. Next, your nucleus is your control center of the cell. It's almost like the city hall in a cell. It contains your DNA. DNA is the nucleic acids that help determine the information about what cell type it is and what the functions do. It actually has a double membrane. It's almost like a strong barrier that protects your DNA. It's usually the easiest to see under a microscope. Sometimes you could stain it. If you look at a cheek cell, it's that big circular structure in the middle. Next, you have your ribosomes. Ribosomes is where proteins synthesize. For ribosome, think of the word rib. If you eat a lot of ribs, you're eating a lot of proteins. They're attached to the endoplasmic reticulum or floating free in the cytosol in the liquid surrounding the cell. They're also produced in a part of the nucleus called the nucleolus. If you look at an actual image of it, you have a polypeptide. Poly means many. Peptide has to do with proteins. Good. Polypeptide means many proteins, so it's almost like a zipper that just keeps adding more and more units to it. All right, next we have our mitochondria. For mitochondria, think mighty means very strong, so that's where you get most of your energy. It's a powerhouse of the cell. It's a site of cellular respiration. I made another video on respiration you can watch on my playlist page. This occurs here to release energy for the cell to use. It's bound by another double membrane. As you can see that these little ridge-like structures give it a lot of sites for respiration to occur. And has its own strand of DNA. That's from your endosymbiotic theory, stating that we might have come from other organisms based on mutually beneficial relationships. What's interesting is as you keep exercising, you actually could add more mitochondria to your body. Your bodies will adapt to this environment it's in, and working out actually helps that out. Next we have our chloroplasts. Chloroplasts are only in plant cells, okay? Some algae as well, not animal cells. They contain the green pigment chlorophyll. That's the name of the chemical where photosynthesis occurs, and this is where food production or glucose is made. You can also see in these they have double membranes. That also helps it store its energy. Cells containing chloroplasts, more box-like structures. If you look at them in a microscope, that's because of the cell walls. But the green part is your chlorophyll. Finally, you have your cell wall. They're found in plant cells and bacterial cells. The type of cell wall, peptidoglycan, determines if you're archaebacteria, like they are, or eubacteria. They have a rigid protective barrier. Plant cells can't move, so then you want to make sure that they have a solid structure on the outside. It's outside of the cell membrane. It's also made up of fiber. Fiber is really hard to digest, so it's actually a good thing for you to eat because it doesn't actually have any calories, but it takes energy to break up those bonds. Alright class, so that's just a quick overview of the different cell organelles. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment down below, and good luck.